We'll kick things off with each phone going on the same 1-hour phone call. We have constant audio playing back on the other end of these calls, and all 4 phones are tested within equal distance of our mini cell tower, where 60 minutes into it, they're all still reporting 100%, except for the iPhone 16 Pro, which somehow dropped all the way down to 94. Now, I don't think we should read too much into those results, since these indicators are only estimates after all, but we'll see if things change here in the messaging test, where we're texting back and forth with our automated chatbot, and kind of like how you'd expect, the bigger models are the ones that do better, with the iPhone 16 Plus actually doing the best, taking the 1-point lead over the Pro Max. Again, these are just estimates, and we'll get a better picture of what's really happening as the test goes on, like here in the email test, which is arguably the least intensive one that we have, where all we're doing is just scrolling through the same set of emails, where this time it's the Pro models that do better, with each of them dropping by only 5 points compared to the 6-point drops on the non-Pro models. If I had to guess, I would say that probably had something to do with the refresh rates ramping down between those scrolls, and if that's true, then we should see a similar result here in the browser test, where each phone is launching into a random page from the same list of websites and then scrolling through them. An hour into it though, no, the big boys perform identically, each dropping by 8 points. The regular 16 drops by 9 points, while the 16 Pro drops by 10, putting it right back to where it started after that phone test, 6 points behind the regular iPhone 16. Here in Instagram, we're scrolling through the home feed just like you would in real life, which I think is important to reflect in a battery test. It's going to be interesting to see how these ProMotion displays on the Pro models affect the performance compared to the non-Pros, since we are doing a lot of scrolling, but it didn't seem to make much of a difference, with all 4 phones actually performing identically, each dropping by 5 points. So no lead changes as we head into the 16-hour standby, where we've actually disabled the always-on displays on the Pro models here to keep everything nice and fair, although obviously if you keep that mode on, then your battery life will be slightly worse. It's worth noting that when these screens are off here, the Plus and the Max should have the advantage, since they have those bigger batteries without having to make up for their bigger screens. And 16 hours later, that's kind of what we see. The 16 Plus and the Pro Max each drop by only 10 points, while the regular 16 has a 12-point drop, with the 16 Pro doing slightly better with an 11-point drop. So it's good to see the iPhone 16 Pro finally starting to do better here, and I expect that trend to continue in YouTube, where we're binge watching the same set of YouTube videos. Just like with the screens, we've calibrated the speakers on each phone to the nearest decibel count, and it's possible that those refresh rates ramping down on the Pro models could give them an advantage, where 60 minutes of binge watching later, at least on the iPhone 16 Pro, it does, with it only draining by 11 points compared to the 13-point drain on the regular iPhone 16. So the 16 Pro is making a bit of a comeback here, while the big boys of course are still way ahead, with them each having 59% remaining. Which, let's talk about that for a second. We're now 22 hours into this test, and there is zero difference so far in terms of battery life between the Plus and the Pro Max, despite Apple's website pointing to a 6-hour advantage for the more expensive Pro model. Which, I don't know, to me seems a little bit misleading, especially since after another hour of gaming, we're seeing near parity. The Plus and the Pro Max have the same 49%, while the 16 and the 16 Pro are only 1 point apart. But then again, these indicators are only estimates, so we'll see if something changes here in Maps, where we're simulating navigation as best as we could. We have the GPS and compass active, and all the phones are actively seeking traffic information, where 60 minutes into it, no, the big models each drop by the same 7 points, while the smaller models drop by the same 8 points. Now, while there isn't much of a difference between the Pros and the non-Pros, the delta between the different sizes though are huge, and it make it even bigger here in Spotify, where after an hour of listening to music, wow, the Pro Max is now 21 points ahead of the 16 Pro, with it being the same exact story with the 16 Plus compared to the regular iPhone 16. To the point where I'm not sure we see the smaller models even make it through this Snapchat test, which is arguably the most intensive test that we have, with the cameras, the microphone, and the speaker all being actively used as we record these clips in a loop, with the regular iPhone 16 being the first one to die, with it lasting 38 minutes into Snap, at which point the 16 Pro Pro is just barely hanging on with 1% left, while the Plus and the Pro Max are at 23 and 24% respectively. That 1% on the Pro only lasted an additional 5 minutes into Snap, with the Plus and Pro Max now being tied at 22%, which to me is the first big result here. If you go with a bigger iPhone 16, regardless of if you go with a 16 Plus or the 16 Pro Max, you're gonna have an additional 22 points of battery, at least with mixed usage like this, which is enough for both of them to get through Snap easily and make it to the intensive app cycle test, where we're opening up the same set of apps, closing them all, and then repeating that process in a loop until these phones die. And it took a while, with each of them going on for not 1, but over 2 hours, where the 16 Pro Max comes up a little bit short of what we got in our last trial, going for an impressive 2 hours and 1 minute into app cycle, while the 16 Plus was at 1%, which lasted it another 11 minutes before it also called it quits. So, overall, given the expected margin of error, I'd say you're pretty much gonna get the same amount of battery life whether you go with a standard or a Pro model, with the only difference coming down to the